Sanam. Good morning to all of those here in the morning parts of the world, and afternoon to everybody else. Happy solstice. It's a wonderful time. We have we have the sun. What makes the solstice the solstice? We're at this shift of seasons, the change in the northern hemisphere from autumn or fall until into winter. So we're in winter properly as of 7:28 p.m. this evening, and with that, there's some cool things to play with. Obviously, we're going to talk about the change of the sun into a different sign and what's happening with that, and what kind of frequency is held throughout this season and also throughout the entirety of the year. But it's interesting and potent, this particular moment, because we're looking at a time where historically, across many cultures, the winter solstice is seen as a time of reverence and internal gathering, but also celebration. One of the older ones is Saturnalia. Saturnalia. I don't know exactly how they would pronounce it, but anyway, it was the Greeks, and it was a celebration that started on the 17th of December and ended on the 23rd. And it was this celebration of the changing of the seasons, and it was a celebration of the god Saturn. So the god Saturn, the keeper of time, the reverence of the harvest, not because it was harvest time, but because now is the time to plant the winter seeds, and to prepare yourself for growth the next growing season in the spring. And the symbolism in that celebration was, among other things, it was a celebration of the sun at its lowest point, where it was darkest on that day, but also the equalizer, the great and substantial equalizer of all things. Saturn was the one god that no one could escape. So time cannot be escaped. No one can escape it. Everyone is a slave to it, or a servant to it somehow or another. And during the festival of Saturnalia, the roles would be reversed. So the slaves would be the masters would be the slaves, and the owners of the homes and the dowries and the estates would take that time to serve the servants. The servants would be allowed to drink and to play and to mess around and to order the servants around, or the masters around, because it was an understanding that during this particular time everyone was equal. Everyone was equal, and so they celebrated that, and they put that into their ceremony. So that's the festival of Saturnalia. It's relevant today because the sun moves into Capricorn. The sign of Capricorn is ruled by the planet Saturn. It's this planet that is steady and dedicated and constant and always moving forward. We're always building something. It's also this planet of restraint. So we get into the winter, and though it's not necessarily true today in today's world, it's true historically, where this was the time of year where we had to be the most restrained. We had to conserve resources. We had to conserve our time and energy, because more energy had to be put into each thing, because, well, it was colder, it was darker, whatever the case may be. All of the different things required that we calm and consolidate. So the steady projection of, we are doing this now so that we can survive until spring, et cetera, et cetera. Now it's again, it's more symbolic now, but it's still embedded in us. We still feel it. It's like we move into Capricorn season, and everyone quiets down a little bit. The first thing we do is we go home to see family. We pay reverence to the transitional line of humans, and we share in our resources, and then we tighten up a little bit. We pull back on the purse strings, and we move a little more slowly and consciously through the world. And that brings us Capricorn season, again ruled by Saturn. This year we have very we have multiple levels of calming down. Like if ever there was a year to like hibernate during the winter season, this is it. The frequency of the solstice has a couple of things tied to it that bring us into a space of more internal focus. First, the sun in Capricorn, we talked about that. And then we also have, at the same time the sun moves into Capricorn, the moon will have just moved into Taurus. And Taurus is also this very slow-moving, careful, methodical energy. It likes nice things. It likes to appreciate the beauty of the world, but it does so in a way that is like, I'm doing this on my time, at my pace. We're not messing with your like weird plans to like run really quickly towards things. No, we've got a goal in mind. There's a long-term thing in mind, and the feeling of the moon in Taurus is fed by those things that give us a forward trajectory that isn't just, I'm going to have fun, I'm going to enjoy this beautiful thing. No, I want to buy this very nice thing for myself, or I want to build this very nice space for myself so that I can enjoy this long into the future. It's not just about having nice things, it's about having things that last. And so we have that moon in Taurus adding to the more careful, consolidated energy. It's also a very private energy. It's not very like externalized. It's not very social. It's more, well, it's grounded. Capricorn and Taurus are both both earth signs. They're both very three-dimensional, very realistic, very practical. And then we have this added instance of, we have this added thing of Saturn. Being the ruler of the season, Saturn rules Capricorn, is in Pisces, and Pisces is less grounded, obviously. We all know a Pisces, it just literally, they just wander off from the group, or they disappear from the chat, or they you never know where they go, and it's a bit floaty. Saturn in Pisces is this, it's a 2.5 year thing, which just started recently, and then it moved backwards almost all the way out of Pisces when it retrograded, and now it's moving forward again, but it's still in the very early parts of Pisces, so it's still kind of bringing us into this new energy of what stable practices can we engage in that enhance our spiritual life. The Saturn in Pisces, the spiritual existence that requires dedication, it requires consistency, and it requires a certain amount of practical influence. We have to think about it and make a plan about it and follow through with that plan, and that puts us into a more stable and powerful spiritual projection forward. So we've got these three things, and they're all interacting harmoniously, which amplifies the internalization of the energy. We have the sun at 0 degrees of Capricorn, the moon at 0 degrees of Taurus, and Pisces, Saturn just in a couple of degrees of Pisces. So there's a unified energy there between the earth signs. There's a kind of stable and comfortable harmony. With Saturn there's a bit of energy involved, but it has to be activated somehow. And so we have those three things, and also in the mix, but less tightly tied, we have another thing in Capricorn, which is Mercury, which has been retrograde, which is relevant also. We have Mercury retrograde pulling our minds inward. So we're not trying to project our thoughts and our experiences and our perspectives outward. We're flipping that. We're turning that around. The retrograde cycle. We're returning to ourselves, and that being the case on the solstice, it kind of sets the frequency, sets the season with a frequency of internal viewing, internal perspective. How are we spreading into our own massive world within ourselves? Because there's a lot more going on internally than we think there is externally. It's quite absurd. It's fun to play with. You want to dive into it and enjoy. So the Mercury retrograde cycle being basically at its peak right now, well, pretty close. The frequency for the season, the entire season of winter, especially the season of Capricorn, but this entire season between now and the spring equinox is kind of flavored by the Mercury retrograde experience. So maybe we're not trying to push our agendas outward so much. We're allowing ourselves to hold inward, develop ourselves more acutely, more appropriately as we move into, well, there's a couple of fun things happening, but as we move forward through the season, we can be more set for some pretty radical fun as things move on. Also involved, which is also important, and what was I going to say about this? I'm jumping ahead. The planet of Jupiter. The planet of Jupiter in Taurus is, well, it's a happy thing. Jupiter wants more, and Taurus wants more nice things, right? So Jupiter would love a pile of rocks as long as it's the biggest pile of rocks, and Taurus wants a pile of shiny rocks. So abstract that out. Play with that in your mind however you want. Jupiter in Taurus brings us more of the things that we want, and that can be overindulged. Obviously, Jupiter is the planet of overindulgence, but at least there's a sort of grounded reality to it. Jupiter in Taurus is over there with the moon in Taurus, and that adds a bit more energy to it, a bit more expansion. Jupiter is a fire planet, so we're not all like fully pulled inward, but it's still Taurus. It's still very very self-focused. We're not trying to focus on what we're scattering out into the winds. We're focusing on what can we bring into us, what kind of prosperity can we pull to us, what kind of abundance can we create in our lives with Jupiter and Taurus, especially as it interacts with all of this for this whole season. How does this go? So Jupiter, the planet Jupiter, the god Jupiter, as it's spoken about in mythology, is actually the son of Saturn. So we have the great teacher, the great bringer of lessons and discipline, Saturn, time and discipline. What was the other one I was looking for? I can't remember. The word might come back. So we have Saturn delivering us lessons, the hard lessons, the long-term lessons, the things that we need to know so that we can live a good life throughout our entire life. And then we have Jupiter, the lessons that we learn through the act of joy and experience and expansion. These two teachers in the pantheon of gods are father and son, which is kind of fun. Especially considering Jupiter in this particular pantheon was the king of the gods. It's like the god of gods, and yet time was his father. So symbolically rich again. It's like no matter how much like joy and abundance and great exuberance and nobility we can hold, time will always be something that is affecting us, that always takes its toll on us, that always takes our energy. but it also obviously gives us energy. It gives us opportunity. It gives us the lessons that we need to live a good life throughout our entire life. It is the restraint that is necessary to hold back Jupiter's overexpansion. It's the forethought that's necessary to keep the Jupiterian lessons relevant throughout time. So we're playing with all that. Now, also involved in this, also playing part, those are really the biggest things that are carrying us through the season. The interaction between these three very specific energies, Sun and Moon and Saturn, pulling us inward. I mean, obviously, we're going to go do things outside, but like, really, like, to focus on growth and to focus on the things that we want this season. It's a very good time to pull yourself and your energy inward. Meditate on what needs to happen, or focus on how you can build yourself internally, and that will expand outward as soon as we get into, well, the later part of the season, and then also back into spring, where it's a much more externalized energy. We start that with Aries. This is also the only season of the year where there are no fire element signs. So you get the three fire elements, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, and those fall into spring, summer, and fall. And then the winter is without this fire energy. So it's a cooler period, naturally. It's a cooler period of existence. It's a cooler period spiritually and mentally, and also physically, externally. And so we listen to that. We allow for the fires to cool down. We allow for the things to slow down and become more solidified. This is a period of crystallization, my brain rolled in like three different directions for a second. It's a period of crystallization. So whatever you want to build is now. This is also the solar equivalent of the new moon. So we get the new moon every month, and it gives us opportunity to begin something, to start some new energy rolling along. And the sun meets this darkest point at the winter solstice, and that is the solar equivalent. We get the new year, the new solar year, and that, again, is a good time. We plant the seeds, we set intentions, we set goals, and we turn dreams into plans, and we have ourselves laid out as a trajectory of human. It's like we're not just us, we are now ourselves, and every iteration of ourself that we wish to be in between now and whatever goal that we set. So it's a really powerful time to do that, set the seeds, especially considering how much else is going on. It's like Jupiter and the moon together in Taurus is like, that's just big prosperity energy. That's big money energy. The teaching in Kundalini Yoga is that as the moon and Jupiter come together, it is impossible to not create wealth. This meditation, it's the part of the Sobhag Kriya, and also called the meditation for prosperity number 2, I believe. And it's the working of Jupiter and the moon. So we have the moon mound on the inside of the palm and Jupiter on the index. So anyway, the moon and Jupiter come together. It's a powerful time. It's very powerful. So if you want to do some prosperity meditations, tonight's a good time, because the moon will be approaching the conjunction with Jupiter from, let's see, what would that be? That would be about 7 p.m. Pacific time, until it reaches the exact conjunction about 10 hours later. So play around with it. See if you can get yourself into a new prosperity frequency with all of that, and then be consistent about it, because it's Capricorn season, and that's really all we need. Consistency is everything. I got myself off track for a second, but that's okay. Also influencing this solstice is one other thing that I wanted to look at. So Venus. Venus is the planet of value, the planet of love and affection and connection, and it's the earth. It's the earthbound love. It's the earth realm frequency of love. But it's just value, right? So Venus rules Taurus. Its natural place is Taurus. One of its natural places is Taurus, and it's currently in Scorpio, the polar opposite. So it's in its, well, technically it's called its detriment, but the brilliance of that is that it's also very, very closely interacting with Uranus, which is over in Taurus. So we get Venus in a bit of a scratchy, kind of uncomfortable place, and Uranus in Taurus, which is also a very uncomfortable place for it. Technically, it's in its fall over there because its favorite place to be is Scorpio. These aren't necessarily things you need to know, but it's relevant. So Venus opposing Uranus. We have Venus, the planet of love and affection, Uranus, the planet of individuation and separation. So it's a bit contrasting in multiple ways. We have multiple layers of contrast here, and when we get those kinds of contrast, we get a frequency that it begs for development. It begs to be worked with. You can't avoid it. It's not like these harmonious things where the energy is just kind of there and you can let it happen, and maybe you like put a little intention into it and it moves in the direction you want it to. This is more like the fights you don't want to have, and the conversations that you're not quite sure you want to deal with, and the scratchy things about, like, scratchy shit with like money and family and weird interactions with loved ones that happen, all those like things. When you think about that, there's something that pops into your mind always, right? And whatever that thing is, this is the kind of energy of that. And whether it's worked with externally in a real like person-to-person manner, or it's worked internally where you're recognizing these things, because we're in an internal time. You're recognizing these energies within you, and where you've allowed for that friction to be unmitigated or just unaddressed, where you've just left it be, and it's just become a more and more scratchy thing in the back of your head, or in the back of your home, or in your interactions with day-to-day people, whatever it might be. So Venus in Scorpio it's very potent in its wants. It loves to have. Right, Scorpio is a very having kind of energy, not necessarily in the sense of like let's just have some of that, let's enjoy some of that. The Scorpio energy wants more, wants all of it. It's a very like all or nothing energy. So it's in a shadow sense, it's possessive and controlling and overbearing. In the light sense, it's very complete. It's very holding of space, and it's very potent in its ability to accept and understand other perspectives and other people's wants. So there's a power with Venus in Scorpio that can come from it, whether it's the shadow power or the other, the light. So there's potential there to really dig into, what do you want? How are you overly controlling about how you get it and things like that? And how can you distill that into something that's a really beneficial frequency for you? And that opposition with that frequency to Uranus, which is begging us all to figure things out for ourselves and think for our own selves, and to understand our values in a way that is more individualized and not pushed or shoved or otherwise forced by societal interaction. Because Uranus in Taurus is like, how do we actually create a value system that is our own? This is like on a big, probably, let's see, this is really like grandiose about it, but like one potential frequency of Uranus and Taurus is the frequency that that they were looking for when Nietzsche said that God was dead and that now we would have to figure it out for ourselves. It's like without the religious structure, we would have to figure out morality on our own because that was the only choice. Otherwise, we'd all just kill everyone, and a lot of that happened as a result. Uranus in Taurus is that finding of values. The moral is something that is born from what is valuable. So Uranus in Taurus begs us to develop our own morals, develop our own values in a way that actually works in society. It's not just, this is what I think and this is what I believe, therefore I'm right, and if you tell me I'm wrong, and I have every right to do whatever I want to you because that's just how I want it to be. No, it's less sinister than that. It's more like develop something that you believe in, develop something that you value, develop an idea of how you want to carry yourself in the world, and then do that. And don't worry about whether or not people think it's right until you hit a wall, and then you think, okay, how can I make this more refined, more complete, more not agreeable, that's not the word, more fitting, just so that everyone can work in this frequency together. Anyway, that's a big, grand vision of Uranus and Taurus. But Venus in Scorpio, the want and the desire and the ability to have an element of control over how you attain those desires, that is a powerful thing as long as you're not digging into the shadow realm of it where you're only doing what you want and only ever doing it in the way that you want it to be done, and that's to hell with everybody else. You bury yourself in the positive frequency of it and use that. So that's a good time. This is a good time for that. This frequency is very, very tightly held at the time of the solstice, so it will carry with us over the next few months. And then really the next important thing, that's pretty much all the time I have. But then Pluto moves into Aquarius in January, and then we all just get to go for a roller coaster ride, internally, externally, societally, and probably psychologically, and we're all going to have fun. All right. Happy solstice. Enjoy your internal space, your internal world, and that's all. Share in that with everyone around you. It's going to be great. All right. Ta-ta.